Welcome to Leaders' Questions.
Before I begin, I want to welcome the UN Special Rapporteur to the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese. I know she's in the Dáil today, and I want to welcome her. There's 250 UN staff who've been killed in Gaza since October 2023, and Ms Albanese's presence today here in the Dáil is especially important as Israel continues its genocidal war of the men, women and children of Gaza. We wish her well in continuing to speak bravely against this atrocity and standing up for the human rights of Palestinians. Iascan Cordia, the Jarmo Jantic and Realtas are Yania will react in a special taku agus Tushmari. Yell ribbon Tehanetual, Hashtel and Tara Rabbit, in the inert like Charlie McConlow, Gulitcha Cannon, Hunga Ogred, €3.8 million the Jontasi, the Agriac in their Gundai and Gununal, La Therapy of her well, the Questi, and the role reacting is special taku. Sharp Jig, me, own Fogerchin, own Head Ogred, Runyanare, Niel Liffing away in Ruatoka, Ain Kind and the Hagriarty Shaw. Tashanish Rete, Lomse, own Rin, Ni Wen now will arrogate the beyond, Aknoro and Arrogedon or Harabi, August the Shaw Scanula. Yes, Concordia, for too long, children with special needs and their parents have been left behind by this government. We now have another scandal where money to fund therapies for children promised by the government 17 months ago was never released. Taoiseach, the parents of children with special needs must battle the state every single day for vital services that their children need. It's a battle that they shouldn't have to fight. My own county of Donegal has become a black spot for supports for children with special needs. For years, parents have been forced to go it alone, crying out to the government to get their act together to ramp up service provision for these children. Then in October 2023, they thought their pleas for help were heard. The Minister Anne Rabbitte announced the Children's Disability Service Grant, supposedly an emergency stopgap government fund to urgently provide services and therapies for children with special needs throughout the state. One parent who was delighted, Taoiseach, with the news was Denise McGahern. Her 9-year-old son, Jack Donaghy, he has cerebral palsy. He's permanently in a wheelchair. Denise has been fighting for physio and speech and language therapy that he so desperately needs. And this money was to be allocated within weeks of the Minister's announcement of the fund being set up. 52 organisations across the state were to benefit from it. But months later, nothing happened. Then in June 2024, 2 days before the local elections, Minister Rabbitte travelled with Charlie McConlow to Letterkenny to announce that immediate allocations of €3.6 million in funding to provide essential therapies to 4 organisations in Donegal. Denise was contacted. She was asked if she and her son Jack would attend the announcement. They were included with the photos with the Minister. They listened to Anne Rabbitte when she told the media that the money would be, and I quote, an absolute game changer for children in Donegal and the surrounding area. They could finally see a glimpse of light at the end of the tunnel. But Taoiseach, 17 months since the Minister's first announcement, that light has vanished. Because none of this money has been released. Not one red cent. Not in Donegal, not anywhere in the country. I went and sought answers on behalf of these families, and have now been told by the department that not only is there no money, but that this money was never there at all. This is scandalous. I spoke to Denise yesterday. She's devastated. Taoiseach, she feels betrayed. She feels that her son Jack was used by the government in a prop, in a photo opportunity during an election campaign. And I would imagine that parents right across the state, parents with children with special needs all over Ireland feel the same way, let down, betrayed again. Now, Taoiseach, you were Taoiseach at the time.
Mind your time,
how on earth, and I'll finish with this question, how on earth did a minister in your government travel to Donegal to make an announcement of emergency funding to be released within weeks to desperate families when the money was never cleared and didn't exist? How did that happen, and what are you going to do to make sure that that money is released to the organisations and families such as Jack can benefit from it?
Taoiseach.
Well, thanks very much, Luscan Corda, and thank you to Deputy Doherty for raising the question. I want to begin where you began, by welcoming the Special Rapporteur for the United Nations for the Occupied Territories to Ireland. Thank them for their work, and I want to, particularly when a representative of the United Nations is in our country, I want to join, I know, with all members of this House and indeed with the Secretary-General of the United Nations in expressing our deep sadness and shock to learn the death of a United Nations Office for Project Services staff member when 2 UN guest houses were hit in Israeli air strikes. 5 other UN personnel were seriously injured, and of course hundreds upon hundreds of people killed in brutal airstrikes, including children, over the last number of days. An utterly despicable situation. Thank you for your question in relation to children's disability services. And let me firstly agree with you that this money should be released. And you asked me what am I going to do. I'm going to make sure it's released. I'm going to make sure it's provided. I've spoken to the Taoiseach about this matter in recent days, the Cabinet Committee on Disability on Monday, and I agree with you, this issue needs to be resolved. People, parents, their children, and organisations who applied in good faith for a scheme that I must acknowledge I think was an innovative and good idea to try and find another mechanism to provide much needed funding, and as you say, a stopgap level of funding to provide vital services. That fund needs to be provided, and I regret that it's gone on as long as it has. So actually thank you for raising the issue. Thank you for raising the views of Denise, and I'm sure there are many others like Denise who rightly want to know when is this going to be resolved. My understanding is that the HSE did launch, as you say, a call for what's called the Children's Disability Service Grant Fund back, I think, in October 2023. There was quite a lot of interest, which probably isn't a surprise to anyone, such as the level of need in relation to this. And following the evaluation process, the HSE have confirmed that projects with a cost of around €8 million have met the criteria for that fund. And this now needs to be provided. I want to say there's no fault on the organisations involved. I'm sure many of those organisations having to deal with the disappointment and concern of parents. The fault is not, of course, on their part. My view is very simple and very clear. If an application met the criteria under the scheme, then of course that application should be funded. So we need to resolve this. We need to resolve it urgently. And I want to thank you for highlighting the issue today. And I'm happy to directly come back to you further on this matter. This is one measure we've taken, and the funding needs to be provided. The second, in terms of what you call stopgap, but I think it's an appropriate phrase while we try to build up capacity, is the initiative that we also took last year in relation to trying to provide additional funding for assessments of needs, and many of which will be required by many of the families I'm sure you deal with in your own work. I'm pleased to say that an initiative we put in place in terms of providing funding for private assessments of needs where required has seen 2,479 assessments of needs commissioned from private providers between June and December of last year at a cost of €8.2 million. We've allocated an additional €10 million for that scheme this year.
Thanks. Taoiseach Deputy.
Taoiseach, imagine having a child with special needs, the love that you have for them, the fact that you'd run through a brick wall for them. Imagine having to fight every single day to get the services that they need, to live with the stress, with the worry, with the anxiety of the development delays, the possible impact on their lives, on their future. Imagine being told by government, a minister no less, that help was on the way. Imagine the incredible stress, the relief, the melting away of some of the stress that you felt for years. Imagine then having that help, that hope that your child was going to get the service ripped away from you, to be told that the help was never actually coming at all. Because that's what the government did here. And I ask you a question, because this isn't just a case of, we'll fix it now. This was cruel. This was cruel what was done. This parent feels that their child was used as a prop. How could a minister announce funding to organisations when the money didn't exist? This has been going on for 17 months. You've been Taoiseach for the majority of that. And you tell me today when I raise this in the Dáil that you'll look into this and you'll make sure that the money's going to be released. This has been going on for a year and a half.
Thanks, Deputy.
And this is only happening because the HSE are not providing the service. Can I just finish with one thing?
Your time is up, Deputy.
Jack has not had any physio or any speech and language from the HSE for a year and a half. For a year and a half, when the department made a promise in front of that child that he would get the services. It is scandalous. And I'm asking you, where's the accountability? How did this happen under your watch? And when is this money going to be released to these families and these organisations?
See, I'm not round with you today, Deputy Doherty, and you seem nearly disappointed that I'm saying I'm going to resolve the matter, because you're right to highlight this issue. You're right to call on us to resolve the issue. And we're going to do that. I mean, I'm not going to stand up and defend something that can't be defended. A scheme was announced in good faith. People applied, and the funding now needs to be provided. And the HSE has a level of funding that is almost eye-watering. And €8 million is a rounding error. And the idea that that €8 million that could make a fundamental difference to the lives of so many children, including in your own county, and hasn't yet been provided is extraordinarily frustrating. And you're asking, I'm not commentating on this, you're asking me what I'm going to do. I've told you very clearly what I'm going to do. I've spoken to the Taoiseach, he and I are in on this issue. We have a Cabinet Committee on Disability. I'm going to resolve the issue and make sure the money flows, because you've outlined the very serious human impact to young children when that doesn't happen, and I thank you for doing that.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.